Welcome back to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
And I'm Amber Duke. Mission accomplished? Well, President Donald Trump is touting the success of his decision to take over the Washington, D.C. police. And even Mayor Muriel Bowser, a Democrat, had kind things to say about it. Let's watch.
The surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city. The most significant thing that we are highlighting today is the area of crime that was most troubling for us in 2023. Now, we have driven it down over the last years, but and I'm going to get my glasses so I can make sure I can see it correctly. But for carjackings, the difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C. We know that when carjackings go down, when the use of gun goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer and are safer.
Trump was more than happy to take the compliment, of course, and wrote on Truth Social, "Wow, Mayor Muriel Bowser of D.C. has become very popular because she worked with me and my great people in bringing crime down to virtually nothing in D.C. Congratulations to Mayor Muriel Bowser, but don't go woke on us. D.C. is a giant victory that never has to end." They're besties now, Amber.
It's lovely to see. I'm proud of her. There was an interesting press conference. She really did go out and she was like, I'm extremely grateful for this federal surge. And she read off some of those numbers. And at the Daily Caller, we did a comparison of a 2-week period from both 2023 and 2024 compared to the same 2-week period during the federal takeover in 2025. And it's exactly as she said, carjackings down between 80 and 90%, assaults down, homicide down, robbery down. Basically all of these big violent crime categories and violent crime in total went down pretty significantly. But I think most importantly, between 2023 and 2024, you did see a reduction in crime in D.C., which is one of the arguments against Trump's federalization of the police force. But we saw a bigger decline between 2024 and 2025 than we did between 2023 and 2024.
Yeah, there's no way around it that this has been successful in terms of some of the numbers bringing down the crime statistics, which is a good thing. It's not that surprising, really. Mayor Bowser's contention for a while now has been that the city is understaffed in terms of its police department, that it has hundreds fewer cops than it should have for a city of this size. That's not the only problem, but that's one of the problems. I've said this many times. I've said this to other libertarians that as much as I don't want to spend more resources on police or fire or anything else, because I just don't want to pay more in taxes, if you put lots of cops, more cops on the street, if they're, if they're just hanging out in the metro station, guess what's going to happen? There are going to be fewer crimes. Now, I don't think that can be a long-term solution, at least not for the federal troops. We could always have more of a police state. You could always have more surveillance. You could spend more money. We could be taxed 50 or 80% to pay for more police resources. And guess what? You would have less crime. We don't want to do that. It's about how much are we willing to pay for, how much are we willing to do, how many of our civil liberties are we willing to restrict in order to get a crime reduction. There's some magic middle ground, I think, between what we had, which was clearly not enough being put particularly towards solving homicides, which is a big problem for, if homicides don't get solved, people are, the minority of the population that is engaged in bad behavior is emboldened to do that kind of thing. Obviously, the summer is the most dangerous part of the year for the kind of outdoor teen misbehavior that I think so captured people's attention and that was really out of the ordinary. The increase in that this summer and last summer that has been well addressed by the federal police. But most of the time you see them out there, they're just standing around doing nothing. It's like I don't want to, as a short-term emergency measure, fine. I don't want to on the long term pay people. It's not even us. The citizens of the country are paying people to stand around and do nothing, right?
Yeah, I agree that ultimately we have to figure out a way to incentivize people to join the DC police force, the Metropolitan PD, make sure that they're compensated properly, that we're getting the right people, and that we're able to replicate the number of bodies that have helped drive this crime decrease. You can't have the National Guard lingering around D.C. forever, right? It's not a long-term solution.
I mean, it's not their problem. It's not, they're responsible for protecting, the nation from a kind of external but domestic threat. It's not like they're not aware. I'm sure they're very well trained, but they're not even aware of like what our local, some laws and criminal statutes differ from municipalities to municipalities. I don't think the taxpayers of America should be paying to fix specifically our crime problem. And there's a better argument for in D.C. than anywhere else because it's partly federal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I take the point that a lot of them are standing around, but at the same time, that's kind of ideal in a way because it shows that it is working, right? Like if they aren't actively chasing down bad guys or getting in gunfights, then that means their presence alone is driving a reduction in people trying to do funny business, which is great. I think the other important thing is if the National Guard can be deployed to some of these wealthier, nicer areas. People were criticizing, well, the National Guard's going down M Street in Georgetown, and what are they doing in Adams Morgan? They should be in Southeast DC, but what they do is they free up the Metro PD to be able to go into Southeast and more actively police that area, which is really where a lot of the crime originates. Right. It's more of a resource management way of actually addressing the problem.
Because we want those areas policed by people who know those areas best.
Right, yeah, we want the beat cops in Southeast, and then we can have the National Guardsmen in some of the nicer areas where...
Which, by the way, is a policing union problem, the same way it is for why none of the escalators work in D.C., because they send the least experienced people to go fix them. The police have had it set up so the newest, most rookie people are, being deployed to the most dangerous areas so they get less good policing. I mean, look, I think a lot of people in higher crime areas simultaneously, they're certainly not for abolishing the police. They want to be policed effectively because it's their property that is stolen. It's their neighborhoods that have violence. But they felt like they have not gotten good policing services in the past, so they're simultaneously skeptical of law enforcement because their interactions have not been good and they feel under-policed in some ways, and also over-policed, but just not in an effective way. So it can be we need the appropriate, this sounds like a tautology, we need the appropriate amount of police doing the appropriate amount of policing. Yeah, get on that, guys. I solve crime there. Just do it correctly. And there won't be a problem. I am skeptical, probably more skeptical than you, and certainly more skeptical than Trump, that this is a model for cities across the country. I think it starts to get into a constitutional issue, to just, especially against the will of the governor or the mayors. This was not really against the will, and they have some right to do it because of D.C., and Mayor Bowser has basically welcomed the assistance. That's very different than Chicago, where you have a totally opposed to it mayor.
And they arguably need it more than DC.
Right, and he doesn't even want to hire more police, on the local level, and also and then why it's their problem. It's Chicago's problem, not ours.
Yeah, I feel that way about Chicago and New York. Like, if people want to elect Mamdani and it just burns to the ground, have fun with that. But at the same time,
you chose this.
Yeah, they did.
I'm going to Rorschach over them. You're going to look at me to save you, and I'm going to say no.
But then I think about the poor conservatives that are trapped in these major metropolitan cities.
They got to move to Texas.
I know. It is sad though, right? To see these once great American metropolis and watch the decline. It is really a shame. Yeah. And part of me wants to say we should have nice cities in our country that people can walk around. But the voting patterns don't bode well.
You get what you buy. You get what you vote for. That's what they're finding out. All right, we'll be back with more Free Media in just a bit. Thanks so much for watching.